Alright guys, this is kind of a first for me. I don't usually do competitive EDH deck techs. Because I'm more of a casual player, I tend to lean casual. I think it's easier for me to make fun decks for everybody that way. But Cody Vociferous Codex is a new commander option from Strixhaven School of Mages, and I thought I would just be one of the first people to try out a competitive build. Now this is very much a prototype like a lot of early competitive decks tend to be. You have to really find out the best way to optimize the deck, to optimize this ability, and it's quite difficult, so let me read off the card. It's a 3-mana colorless 1/4 artifact construct creature with you can't cast permanent spells. Now that's a big red flag. It's not going to keep us from playing competitively, but it's going to slow down the deck a little bit, make it a lot harder later in the game. If we're looking to go off, we don't have all of the mana sources available to us, but we're still going to lean on instants and sorceries for our mana, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I do not recommend this for a normal competitive EDH playgroup. I think it's competitive, but it's still very much a prototype. The activated ability here is 4 mana and tap to add 1 mana of each color. When you cast your next spell this turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery card with a lesser mana value. Until the end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost, and you put each other card exiled this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. So we want to lean heavily on instants and sorceries. Obviously, we're not able to take advantage of artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers, anything else with this card, with this ability. So Cody does have potential though, I should say. If you're able to untap, if you're able to have a proper setup, you should be able to generate infinite mana and then go off pretty easy at that point. So I'm just going to go over category by category. We have a bunch here. I'm only playing a couple counter spells because this is more of a storm deck. This is more of a deck that's really looking to combo and be aggressive with its combo. So the same thing is going to be for removal. We're only playing a little bit of removal later on, but I have Pact of Negation and Muddle the Mixture. I think Muddle the Mixture is great because it doesn't just have to be a counter spell, it's going to be transmuted so that we can go get an Isochron Scepter. We have some good card draw in here. We have Brainstorm, really good with Cody because the ability is almost like a cascade for instants and sorceries. So if we're able to put a card from our hand that we really want to put back on top of our deck, we can go ahead and do that with Brainstorm. We have Gitaxian Probe, always competitive. We have Mystic Remora. If you're going to use a setup card in here that's not an instant or sorcery, make sure that it's cheap, make sure that you can get it out before your Cody. That way you get the most advantage. We have Ponder, we have Impulse, not really draw, but it's similar to a cantrip. It has a similar purpose in a lot of these decks. Limdol's Vault is probably going to be an all-star in this kind of deck where you can set up the top 5 cards of your library. Doing this just means that the next time you use your Cody's ability for mana and you cast a spell, you can just ensure that the next card you get is what you want to get. And then we have Sylvan Library. It's more card draw, same thing as Mystic Remora. You want to get it out there before you play your Cody. And then we have Frantic Search, always good for storm decks if you're able to break even or get your mana back. You draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards and untap up to 3 lands. We have Hull Breacher. We are playing a couple wheels in here. And then we have Wheel of Fortune, we have Wheel of Misfortune here. So both of these in combination with Hull Breacher is borderline a win. If we wanted to, we could put that in a win category and maybe even add something else like a Smothering Tithe or a Narset Parter of Veils just to take advantage of more wheels. That could be a good backup plan, so just look out for those. And then we have Peer into the Abyss. 7 mana black sorcery, target player draws equal to half the number of cards in their library and then loses half their life roundup each time. Which is just good and competitive because 7 mana isn't too difficult to get to, and then you just get half the cards into your hand. So for a lot of the reasons why you would play something like Ad Nauseam, a lot of people have been looking into Peer into the Abyss if you can cast it easily. And then we have graveyard cards, just cards that'll help us get our instants and sorceries back, can help us combo, can help us win. We have Noxious Revival and Regrowth, pretty much to do a similar thing. Noxious Revival is even better because you don't have to pay any mana to play it. And then we have Underworld Breach, and then we also have Yawgmoth's Will. These do pretty much the same thing. Underworld Breach does require us to have some more cards in our graveyard, but they're still fantastic. I think if you're wheeling a bunch, if you're playing a lot of cantrips, you should be able to exile a few cards, no problem. We have Mnemonic Betrayal, kind of the same card, but you exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards and then you get to cast those cards this turn. So it's really dependent on your opponent's graveyards, which in a competitive arena, that's a lot of cards you can play. Then we have Sevin's Reclamation. really awesome sorcery. I mean, just being able to get back permanent cards from your graveyard. If you really are only able to take advantage of instants and sorceries, I think Sevin's Reclamation is a great way to get cards back. And then we have some Haste Enablers in here, just cards that are necessary because our commander has a tap ability. It's an artifact, but it's still a creature. So it enters the battlefield tapped, which is the worst thing about it, but we can tap it to pay 3 life, add 1 mana, and then use that mana on a creature, and then that creature gains haste. We have Mass Hysteria, so all creatures have haste. It's a 1 mana enchantment. And we have Need for Speed and Generator Servant. I think all of these, by the way, it goes without saying these are going to be setup cards. You don't want to play these after you already have your Cody out there because you won't be able to. And then we have 28 lands here. We have Ancient Tomb just to get off to a quicker start. We have Arid Mesa, Badlands, Bayou, Bloodstained Mire, Boseiju, who shelters all just to make sure our really important instants and sorceries resolve. And then we have Breeding Pool, City of Brass, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Flooded Strand, Gemstone Caverns can also help us get off to a quick start. Hall of the Bandit Lord, as I just mentioned, really important for haste. And then we have Mana Confluence, Marsh Flats, Misty Rainforest, Morphic Pool, Polluted Delta, Scalding Tarn, Spire of Industry, Tropical Island, Tundra, Underground Sea, Verdant Catacombs, Volcanic Island, Watery Grave, Windswept Heath, Wooded Foothills. And for our mana, we have some artifacts in here, and it's kind of the downside of the deck, is that later on in the game, you have to find a way to bounce back Cody to your hand. You have to find a way to get it back into the command zone. You have to get it off the field so that you can play other spells. But early on, these are still going to be for a setup. We have Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal, Mana Crypt, Mox Diamond, Carpet of Flowers, Culling the Weak, which is actually a way we can do that and also gain mana. So we can just sacrifice our Cody and then have 4 black mana. We have Dark Ritual, just to get us 3 black. Mana Vault, Reign of Filth, which is really good in a Storm deck if you're just looking to get easy mana, and you know you're not going to really have another turn to do anything. Just sacrifice a land and then add a black mana. And then we have Soul Ring, Cabal Ritual, Dockside Extortionist. Again, goes without saying, these are what you want to play before your commander. And then we have Grim Monolith, Summer Bloom. This is also fantastic in a Storm deck if you're able to draw a bunch of cards and you're able to go off. It's also a sorcery, so it doesn't really hurt the deck. You play up to 3 additional land cards this turn. And then we have Jeska's Will, another fantastic ritual card because it also exiles the top 3 cards of our library. We get to play them this turn. And then we have Seething Song, 3 mana for 5 mana, so perfect rituals, kind of a decent combination. I don't really have any mana dorks in here, although I feel like if I played them, I would run into the same problem and even worse than with the artifacts because they're even more dead in your hand because at least you can get rid of your Cody and then drop into play a Mana Crypt and immediately use it. So it's a work in progress. If you have any recommendations to make this even more efficient, please let me know. I'll have the link to the deck in the description below. Then we have some protection in here just to help our combo, just to really help anything go off in the deck. We have Silence, so our opponents can't cast spells this turn. We have Veil of Summer, making it so that spells we control can't be countered this turn. And then we have some removal in here, which is really just to help us if we need to get around our commander's downside. Outside of that, still going to be good to remove whatever else is on the board. And we have Chain of Vapor, so we return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. We can sacrifice a land to copy it. And then we have Nature's Claim, destroys an artifact or enchantment. Its controller gains 4 life, so we can destroy Cody even. And then we have Snap, we return target creature to its owner's hand and then untap up to 2 lands. So if we have a Haste Enabler, this is pretty much a cost-free way of getting our Cody back out there after we get whatever else we want to get out there. Maybe it was a creature that we can combo with, maybe it was an Isochron Scepter, something like that, and we just needed to get Cody off the field. And then we have Toxic Deluge because it's one of the better board wipes in the game, also capable of just killing everything including our Cody, so we just have to pay that life. And then we have some Storm cards in here. Well, I wouldn't really say they're Storm cards, but they just help us go off and continue to go off because they provide us with some kind of mana advantage. So we have Baral, Chief of Compliance, making it so that your instants and sorceries cost 1 less, means that you're going to be able to float more mana, means that it's going to be easier for you to go off in a single turn. Same thing with Goblin Electromancer. And then we have a new card in here, Bergi, God of Storytelling. Whenever you cast a spell, you add a red mana, until end of turn you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. This is even better, even though it's a 3 mana creature, because whenever you play anything, if it's like a 1 mana card, the cost reduction from Baral and Goblin Electromancer doesn't really matter. You will get more red mana for like every spell you play. So you can easily go off with Birgi, and if you're able to just continuously get to your cantrips, your untap spells, stuff like that. And we have some tutors in here, like 10 of them actually. We have Enlightened Tutor, so we can go get our Isochron Scepter or other win cons that we're looking for. We have Gamble, we have Imperial Seal, we have Mystical Tutor, we have Vampiric Tutor, Demonic Tutor, we have Tainted Pact, which isn't really so much a tutor, it's actually closer to a win con. I mean, if you get to Athas's Oracle, you can just Tainted Pact to 0 cards in your library, and then if you have something like a Gitaxian Probe, you can then win that way. And then we have Transmute Artifact, which is fantastic, probably one of the better cards in the whole deck, because we're able to sacrifice our Cody and then get something like an Aetherflux Reservoir. We can get something like an Isochron Scepter, whatever we're looking for, could be a Grim Monolith even. By doing that, we're then able to combo off. We just have to find a way to recast Cody, and then you can continue your turn. And then we have Intuition. Since we have a lot of cards in here that kind of do the same thing, it shouldn't be too difficult to get the card that you're looking for. We have a lot of untapped cards that pretty much do the same thing, and we have a lot of Haste Enablers that pretty much do the same thing. So Intuition, if we're really looking for any of those. And then we have Mystical Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, and then we have Wear of Invention. Really good because unlike a lot of other X-costed spells, X is allowed to be 0 here, so you can end up searching for some kind of mana crypt or, anything that's 0 costed, so it's not completely useless, but ideally you want to use this to get Isochron Scepter, you want to use this to get Aetherflux Reservoir, and we have some untapped cards. These are actually pretty important for the deck, because then we're able to untap our Cody, and then generate even more mana, and kind of go for a Storm turn if we want to. We have Cerulean Wisps, 1 blue mana, target creature becomes blue until end of turn, untap that creature, and we draw a card. This one's pretty efficient, it's only 1 blue, and we are able to untap our Cody. We have Training Grounds, not really an untapped card, but it's a perfect setup card for our commander since the ability costs 4 generic. We reduce it by 2. So it makes it even more likely that we're able to go off and float even more mana. Then we have Benefactor's Draft. We untap all creatures until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls blocks, we draw a card. But regardless, we draw a card anyway, so. And then we have Refocus. We untap target creature and then draw a card. There are other cards, there are other instants and sorceries that untap that are really cheap, but they don't offer us card draw. These will help us keep our turn going. And then we have Tidal Bore. This one is the most efficient because we can return an island we control back to our hand instead of paying its mana cost to untap our Cody. And then we have probably one of the craziest cards in the deck if you're able to play it. I think exploring this deck in casual might be even better because something like this will go off with Cody. And if you don't have to win within 5 turns, then yeah, it's certainly going to help you out. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn, and then you untap those creatures. So this has potential for commander damage as well, but it's really just in here to help us untap. It can even help us draw cards too. Pretty crazy card. And then we have Turnabout, so we can tap or untap all artifacts, creatures, or lands target player controls. So if we want to untap all of our artifacts, we can get our mana rocks untapped in addition to our commander. And our win cons in here, since this is more of a storm deck, expect to see some storm cards in here. We have Brain Freeze, 2 mana blue instant, target player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. So if you have this other combo here, we have Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal. That's a bunch of times you're casting Dramatic Reversal if you have Cody out there, and then once you cast your Brain Freeze, while you're just milling each of your opponents. We of course have Thassa's Oracle. I think Thassa's Oracle is always a good backup plan. It's pretty cheap, but you can run out of cards in your deck with something like a Tainted Pact, and then you have a Gitaxian Probe or Ponder, anything like that, and then win the game that way. And then we have Aetherflux Reservoir, of course, because you need more than just one way to storm out and win. Gain a bunch of life and then you kill off your opponents. And to finish it off, we do have Ad Nauseam. So if you're looking to go off pretty quickly, Ad Nauseam might not be that great in this deck because like I said, our commander is very restrictive, so we're not able to play permanents, and that might hold us back, that might limit our options, but I still think it's worth playing in a competitive atmosphere. So anyway, everyone, let me know what you think about Cody Vociferous Codex. I think it's a fun commander option. I think casually it can be even more fun if you want to play a 5-color Spellslinger deck, really take advantage of instants and sorceries, not so much creatures. There's a lot of fun to be had here with this commander. So as always, the link to my decks are in the description below if you want to go check it out. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like, comment, share, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Void here signing off. Have a wonderful day.